Hey, good morning. Hi. Happy day after Thanksgiving, everyone. Um, I have been wanting to share something that I have turned around, which was kind of a big deal. Most of you are interested in, turning around your relationship with your twin flame, which is kind of a version of a specific person. Um, uh, but I had an issue with my dad. So, you guys, I think this will really help you because of how I figured out how to change this. So, my dad is about 80, and he had blocked me, my dad, I know, for like 2 years. And the only thing I knew was that he was saying that what he said was something very weird, that I had made him miserable since I was 12. Now, obviously, I'm far beyond 12. And hi, guys. I'm talking about getting a specific person, and in this case, my dad. But I think the way I did it will really help with other people's situations. So, I do coaching, and I've helped a lot of people. But I was sort of ignoring this because, I don't know, there's other stuff going on in my life. But it became kind of critical because I've been looking at moving back to where I'm from. And my aunt, my dad's sister, twice I manifested going back there and her saying, "Oh, you can't come here because your dad's here and I don't want any trouble." And so this was my family home, and I didn't want to experience that. But, I couldn't really figure out what was going on. I tried just like everyone else, I'm like, okay, trying to strategize, like, well, what can I do about this? And, I tried logic and various other things, and I didn't quite get it because I hadn't had a fight with my dad, and I didn't consciously have like some sort of, awareness that I had created this. But as I'm like, coaching people and teaching people and, doing the rest of my life, I'm like, wait a minute, I have to apply, I have to apply what I apply to everything else to this situation with my dad. And, as I said before, most of you are really concerned about, being with your twin flame or specific person or whatever you want to call it. But in a way, your parents are kind of the ultimate specific person, just kind of like your twin flame is, because like you're born into it, right? In one sense, your consciousness chooses it, but then you're in, right? Because you only have one biological dad and one biological mom. And so you can either make this a very pleasant experience while you're on this planet or not so much. And this was like becoming a not so much. So I finally like, I had other stuff going on, right? I was going to Europe, and the first time I went to Europe, I actually had to like change my whole trip around this thing with my dad because I wanted to see my aunt. I hadn't seen her in a long time, and so I changed my trip. And she was very receptive when he wasn't there. But then last October, he was there for 6 weeks from all of September to mid-October. And for the purpose that I wanted to go there, I couldn't go at the end of October. And so I had to square on deal with it. And so I was like I kind of created the situation where I had to do one thing or another. So I wound up manifesting a complete stranger. I was looking at houses, and she had a house on this island that I was interested in to put me up because I couldn't really stay at my family home, and I didn't want to stay at a hotel. And so as I was doing that, I kept listening to the teachings of Neville Goddard, which happened to coincide with my own personal metaphysical experiences. It finally dawned on me, that feeling really is the secret. So a lot of the tools that we use to shift and to change our outside experiences are really tools to change our own inner beliefs and experiences. And so I finally took what my dad said literally, that, I had made him miserable since I was 12. I'm like, what happened when I was 12? And I realized it was actually kind of earlier than when I was 12. I literally wrote my dad a very ugly part to play. I made him into somebody who was unhappy. I made him into somebody who didn't really care about me. I made him into all these very unlovely things. And ultimately, I made him, into this person that was blocking me. And then I was like really thinking about, well, okay, what's like the antidote to that? And it finally occurred to me that the antidote to that feeling was the feeling that I had when I was very small and that I wanted to have, which was that, my dad loved me. My dad really wanted to be with me. My dad enjoyed being with me. My dad was so happy to see me, and just like how to convey this feeling. Like, when I was like 1 year old, right, my dad was thrilled with me. I have this like really old picture of actually when I was 3.5, where he was just very joyous to be with me. But I didn't use the picture. I used the feeling, and I kind of remember deep in my consciousness this feeling of this very pure sort of joyful relationship. So what I did was I just latched onto that feeling, and I really concentrated, not just mentally, but I really felt that feeling. And yes, I wrote like, affirmations. My dad is really happy to see me. My dad really loves me. My dad loves me unconditionally. All these things, right? But, this is real life, guys. It's not like, it's a phone call, right? So, I'm like spending this $2,000 to go to this trip. I am staying with this stranger, I didn't do like the imaginary scene at the end, but I really felt into the feeling of how joyful it was to be with my dad. And after doing this for a while, I started to feel like, wow, he's this sweet old man. Of course he wants to see me, Anyway, so I went, and I didn't even have a plan for going back. I decided that I would go to Zagreb, which is the big city. Big. It's like 200,000 people. It's an ancient city. It's like 1,000 years old. That's where I was born. And I stayed with this lady. She picked me up at the airport. She was very lovely. We talked all about all kinds of things all into the night. And somehow she asked about my family, and I shared with her, not the whole story, but I told her about my dad and being worried and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, don't worry. When you come back, you can stay here. Now notice, I didn't have a place to stay. I hadn't prearranged that. So I manifested her asking me to stay with her. So there was no pressure on me to be in a hotel or taxis or whatever, because the city is pretty big. It would have been like, a $60 cab ride to get to my family home. So, I manifested that, and she's like, okay, don't worry, I will take you there. And so I went to the island to do what I was going to do there, and I kept having, this feeling, not all the time, because I was doing all these things, but whenever I would think about it, I really felt into this feeling. And my dad did not know I was coming. My aunt did not know I was coming, because she had gotten so agitated that I might just come there. She made it really clear that she didn't want me to come there. So this is what happened. And so after I was there for 10 days, I came back to this lady's house, and I was going to be in town for about 36 hours. And by this time, this lady had caught the flu, and she was really, really, really sick. Like, she had 102 temperature. She still drove me. The 40 minutes to my family house. And when we got there, my dad was in the front yard. There's like a fence, with you could see through, and he was out there doing something. And he kind of saw me, and he went back in, and I was like, oh. But I was like, I caught myself. I'm like, nope, I am going to persist in this feeling. I'm staying true to this feeling. So she looked at me, and she's like, okay, I'll stay here to make sure you get in. I'm like, okay. And so I went and I rang the doorbell because he had run in. And he comes out, and he was like, all grumpy and looking. And so he opens the door because I knew he would open the door. I mean, he hadn't seen me in physically in years, not. And mind you, he had blocked me on his cell phone here in the United States. He blocked me there. Like, I couldn't get to him any other way. So he opens the door, and I just channeled just this pure feeling of like when I was, 2 years old, of that bond between us and how we loved each other. And it melted. It like dissolved everything. And I just gave him a hug, and he started to talk about blah, 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 and he just stopped, and he just let go. And, he called me in, and, she left. And apparently I had manifested my aunt being gone at some foot thing, because she's normally always at home. She's also like 75, and she never has anything to do. So she was gone. So I had all this time with him. But more importantly, like when he started going, oh, we have these things, he started to bring up the ugly stuff, right? And I just said, I am so sorry for whatever I could have said or done, because I took responsibility. I took internally, I had taken responsibility for creating him as this character that had all these unlovely feelings towards me, because that was my energy being pushed out in him, right? And so, but then I didn't sit in it. I didn't feel guilty or bad. I just allowed the love to flow through, and he just melted. He teared up. He said he was so sorry. Like, I didn't look for an apology, but he said he was so sorry. He took me car shopping, and I'm like in Zagreb, Croatia. Like, he almost bought me a new Kia car. It was like, I think if I had like been open to it, he would have just bought me a car. He just was really lovely, and he took me over to the other house where his other sister, my aunt, my godmother, had lived in. And he opened up all her closets. And my aunt had been like, oh my God, she was like a fashionista. And she had amazing clothes. And I'm a little bit smaller than her. But he's like, just take whatever you want. I want you to have whatever you want. And I mean, so, he was like, he just opened everything up. He opened his heart, most of all. And so, after 6 hours, my aunt came back, and we went to dinner, and my aunt was completely freaked out. She kept looking at me like he was going to explode or something. And I'm like, it's okay, don't worry, it's okay. And then we wound up going to lunch together, and I have photos, I can post photos, but he was just, it changed everything. It doesn't matter what I got. I got beautiful clothes, but it doesn't matter. It just changed everything, right? And when I could have manifested staying over there at night, but I was exhausted. I hadn't actually eaten very much, and my aunt was like, when my dad and my aunt drove me back to this lady's house, and he said, next time you really have to stay here, and that was good enough for me. The other piece of this was that my aunt looked at me, and she said, she had tears in her eyes, and she was like, thank you. Like, it was like, she had enough awareness that she saw the two, she didn't know what was happening, but she did see like the 180-degree change. So why do I tell you this? I'm telling you this because this is exactly what I did with my twin flame. Are you guys listening? And, when I tell you that you are creating the people in your life, I'm not just saying this because I'm parroting some, teacher that lived, 60 years ago that I've been listening to. I'm telling you this because it's my real personal experience. In some ways, you guys can change things with your twin flame easier than you're going to be able to change them with your parents. But how many of you have a horrible relationship or one that you really don't like with your mother or your dad or someone in your family? You can do this. You don't have to live like that. Once you become aware that you created that person, you created that script like a play for them to enact, and they don't want to be this ugly person to you. You don't even get that. I had the immense fortune of having done this enough that when my dad said that, it still took me a year. It took me a year to figure this out because I wasn't focusing on it until it was straight in my face. But the thing that he said to me was that I made him miserable since I was 12. And at first I fought against it. I was like, he's got dementia. He's ill. He's this makes no sense. And then it finally hit me. Oh my God. He's just literally telling me what I did. That I wrote him this way and he hates it. Anyway, when he dropped me off at this lady's house, he had tears in his eyes and he said, "Thank you so much. I love you so much. And now I can die." Now, I was like, no, don't die. But what he meant was, it was like the biggest relief in his life not to have to be this way with me. So, guys, you think your twin flame has done something to you or your parents done something to you. You don't realize that you've created this situation and they don't like it any more than you do. It would be like if somebody wrote you this awful, mean, horrible role and you felt compelled to constantly live it and you hated it. But you're not the operant power, the other person is. So in your world, in your reality, you are literally the only one with free will, not the other person. They may have some other reality where, you're a guest and you're a shadow, but in this world that you are experiencing, you're it. You are the one that is the operant power. Everything comes out of you. So, there's all these different techniques, and I do one-on-one coaching to help people see this. But yes, you can use this technique for any relationship, anything. You just have to stay in that. It's not even being positive. It's staying in that feeling of what you really want. And believing in that. Totally. Anyway. I'm sure some of you are at home for the holidays or whatever. So, first of all, forgive yourselves because you've created this. Second, just let it sink in that you can change it. And then as you start to realize you can change it, you're going to naturally get the inspiration for the feeling that you need to change that. There's this technique called revision that you can go and revise the past. And I have to be honest with you, because of my twin flame journey, I have revised so much of my prior life, and that's probably why I could see this when it came, as it came up. However, you're now getting kind of the concentrated form of it, and so you can do this. You can totally do this. Anyway, I hope you have a lovely holiday and are inspired to create something beautiful in your life. I intend that you take this and you create your own heaven and your own beautiful relationships in your life. if you can feel it, you can have it. So, love you guys.